I'm
daycare,
not
all kinds of things.
an expert. We do have Andrew Webb from CDOT. We're not going to ask him to present, but he is he's very sharp and very well schooled on that. So
right.
Well, I guess if you could explain, because you've used the term the Main Street tonight several times, and so it's not the zoning. If it's not the zoning, then what does it mean?
Yeah, it's more about that public realm space, a feel, a character of a main street. And we'll. It's a good point because I think we need to be clear as we move forward, not to commingle those. So, but it's more about character experience, having retail or restaurant perspective.
Yeah, as a blind person hearing you talk and imagining their slides, I'm like, are they going to build streets through this thing? Change the street numbering and all of it and have a main street? I mean, I had no idea. So.
Yeah, well, to that point, one of the suggestions through the zoning map that we shared was Bel Air goes north-south, potentially an alignment where a street, which I was using the term Main Street for, could align with the grid and provide that interface for retail or other uses to align on a streetscape.
I have another question since I kind of got myself in here thinking. When you talk about doing this construction and so forth, you're talking about setbacks. Are there going to be changes in terms of the way pedestrians are handled in this area? For instance, we've got sidewalks that are about the size of a stick of gum in most of the neighborhoods. Is that something that's going to change in that area? Is it something where it's going to be built with a totally different feel in mind?
Well, I do understand it. Yes. So I mentioned streetscape. We're not in that point in the process of looking at specific design, but there are streetscape requirements and how that works along, especially with redevelopment, because we're going to be redeveloping the site. So really the perimeter will have new treatment along the whole perimeter, improved landscape, all those components, improved walkability
and the interior. I mean, it's not going to be one wedding tent or what have you. There will be some grid connectivity and likely much more than these envelopes show. There will be more streets and pedestrian thoroughfares, each that will come with the code requirements of the streetscape. And we want to make sure that we do a really good job of that. I think getting to Kate, your question, like what does Main Street mean to us? I think Main Street means to us, like we showed the image of South Gaylord, South Pearl. I think Belmar, to a certain extent, but Belmar doesn't have one kind of Main Street that I think of. It has like more of just a bunch of active streets. I think we want activity and we want a high caliber of design and streetscape everywhere. But I think there could be an opportunity for a focus point on a Main Street here that has a real good character. We don't know what that looks like yet. We haven't designed it yet, but that's kind of what it means. It doesn't mean the densest part of the development. I think it means the most walkable, active, and
people-friendly.
Yes.
Car-friendly.
Yes.
And even thinking about bicycles and how that works around the whole site and also into the site too. So
what are you envisioning in terms of transportation and traffic in this area? I mean, and maybe that's come up in a minute, but this is kind of a section on transportation. So is there thoughts of having like the buses go through this area, or do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, currently the main bus route is along
46.
Colorado. Yeah.
Oh, 40 and 46.
Well, there's RTD stops, at Colorado and Louisiana.
Right.
But we have not anticipated or looked into any further bus-related transit that would be connected to this. We're just initiating the process that goes through the transportation analysis, so that'll be information that'll be coming as we meet further with these sessions. And so we're understanding existing conditions, and then as the uses and ideas evolve, then those factors go into the analysis.
And one of the other ones tonight is
It is.
Yep.
So hearing today that we have a transition
Height is very important to me because I have a home in Arkansas, Claremont.
Okay.
So I'm butting right up, Kelly is right up to this, and that is extremely important to me to clearly understand.
Everywhere is different.
Yeah, and that's an important point that we wanted to highlight tonight. That as part of what's currently there today, we intend to respect that and talk about how that can evolve into building form and what setbacks and those other things develop over time.
I have a question. So, like on this map, it looks like you've got a street going through. Is this like Bel Air going through right here? And then this right here. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, we were articulating that with a redevelopment site like this. This is a large block. So you would need, and Sean was highlighting it, on the pedestrian and vehicular routes within it. There'll be a lot more.
It would be retail, would be office,
that would
retail,
occur
could be gym,
as this evolves into a design or a development plan.
So
as you go through the process, but on a bigger scale, just talking about kind of blocks of area. The sense that there's this opportunity to integrate the grid and with Bel Air, and then acknowledging that likely because of the scale of the whole site, that central it may not be right in there, but there might be some spine. So we wanted to help break down the envelope because that influences and helps better explain that it wouldn't be, if you had one mass, people might interpret that as massive building, and the reality is
Yeah, so this, I mean, in the next, I'd say, couple meetings, as more realistic development uses come together, it will break down considerably more and have more circulation and less of that mass that you see today. Absolutely.
So what, for zoning, zero setbacks on streets, what does that mean?
So basically, no, understood.
But that's what's in there right now.
That's what's in there right now. Correct. So that means zero is at the right of way. So where technically the property boundary is today. So
It's like the places right next to Broadway.
So we would anticipate that there would be. There's a discussion in the code about build to, which is building to the street, and there's a range of depth that allows. But sometimes you would want to be at a zero. Sometimes you may want to have that relief.
Yeah, the way the code works is suburban is the context that we're talking about here. Generally speaking, has the most setback, but the SMX kind of has various options. So it can be urban, like on a main street. You might want, and that's why we're all talking about. You don't want parking next to your sidewalk, or it can take a more traditional retail format where you would have parking in front of a building. I think that's something that we want to balance with you guys is how do we create those walkable areas with also some areas that have to be setback. Obviously, as we think about the sites, as we transition towards the neighborhood, that's a very important thing is the neighborhood height transition, but also what that landscaping and setback might look like.
There's nothing else I know. Good 15 minutes if you guys want to switch.
Any other quick questions? While we have a minute before we switch stations. So let us. If anything else comes up, we're here.
Keep firing away.
Yeah, please. You can grab us and have a question individually too on any of these items. Thank you. All right, just wanted to make sure. Oh, thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Yeah. We look forward to it. Yeah, no.
One would be a retail commercial. And we just said, okay, let's look at that. What kind of things would extra large grocer, large and medium. Extra large would be like the Costco's of the world, Sam's Clubs of the world. Large would be King's or Safeway. that 80 to 100,000 square foot user. Medium would be the Whole Foods, Sprouts, Vitamin Cottage. It's one of those. And so we tried to break all that out and really kind of hone in what everybody would want to see as kind of that anchor. And we broke out retail soft goods, entertainment experience, which is that movie theater, music performance, activating entertainment like Topgolf, Dave and Buster's, something like that. And then fitness anchor, which healthy living is an interesting concept. It's kind of like a Denver Athletic Club downtown, where you have pool, you have racquetball, you have a restaurant, you have daycare, all under one roof. And then the standard gym is like a 24-hour fitness like
Thank you.
Everybody got pens and
Combination of
the fitness and that like healthy living would be and then not yet.
They're going to have a grocery, extra large grocery.
I would say standard.
Super Walmart,
Yeah. Like I would say the healthy living center would be like there's restaurants and daycares that it's all under kind of one roof rather than just a pure fitness focus.
Soft retail goods.
You do know we had no participants in our meeting.
Oh, really?
That's why the turnout is.
Oh, no. I thought it was the same.
The date was never posted. We didn't have the date and the place and the time locked in for Monday, so it's all it's crazy.
Well, now we've got it set. We've got it set for the next few months.
Going forward.
And then what we did is we tried to say, okay, we've got the anchors, we'll get your feedback there, and then let's break it into that complementary kind of space that follow anchors. And that's really broken into restaurants, yummy retail, other complementary retail. Yummy's like coffee and ice cream. Yeah. Candy shop. We might have coined, who knows?
We're getting too far.
Give some examples of like a small.
Which one are you on?
I just heard yummy.
Oh, yummy, like ice cream, chocolate shops, candy. Either local or national. It's more of the use versus brand.
Yeah, and then go after. That's always.
Yeah, and there's a comment section, and you're welcome to
And then,
add that as well. And yeah, this is
if you flip to the back, then we kind of start getting into the differences. Residential section and the hotel section. Then we kind of broke into residential into for rent and for sale. And that's got a mix of senior, income restricted, and then market rate. And then on the office, we've broken out from a standard to co-working. Co-working is like the WeWork galvanized shared office concept. And then hotel, we've done full service, extended, and limited. Limited would be like, the new Moxie that went up in Cherry Creek. So it's a little smaller units. You're really there to just sleep and take advantage of the surrounding area. Typically, they're really in dense areas with like, in this circumstance, what we're bringing up, you'd have kind of activation from a retail standpoint.
You know what I'd like to see if we have 3 stories and that's part of a transition into the neighborhood? I'd love to see live workspaces for artists.
Oh, that's cool.
Put
So
it
then
in
we
the
put
comment
comment.
section.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
So you guys have like a lot of really specific stuff for retail space once and just not once, right?
Yep. Well, so what we did is, what we tried to do was, we got so many comments, and it was really high-level comments. So what we're trying to do is hone in kind of what use people actually would be interested in.
But at the end of the day, it's not up to you. It's whoever wants to buy the space.
It's market-driven. But the idea is to really hone in what's interested in the neighborhood, and then we could go and see what we can provide. There's obviously a balancing act from a market standpoint. allocated. Sure.
Right, but, I mean, if you're just building buildings, you don't get to pick who gets to buy those buildings, right? Or who moves in.
No, you do as an owner of that. I mean, it's not, you don't take your first person typically, your first tenant, your first interested party. It's really a process of going through and selecting what you think is best. So it's not...
So there is oversight, there's not...
Oh, yeah. From our perspective, we're committed to a good development, and just on all of our projects, you just don't get that one tenant and take them. You're really wanting them to be successful. You're wanting the center to be successful. You're wanting it to be a good activation for the neighborhood on a retail project. Like, to give you an example on a small project, we did a deal on 43rd and Tennyson. I think we went through, we had a pure restaurant space that was perfect. It was kind of like our anchor. We probably went through 15 to 17 restaurant LOIs. We didn't know if we'd go try it and figure out if all of us liked it. And then it was not one person's opinion, it was 5, and we all kind of had to come to an agreement of what we all liked. So it's Atomic Cowboy, and he's doing a really good job up there. The neighborhood loves it. Yep, Bijou's there. He did a good job.
Work in there.
Did you? Okay. From what kind of?
I did metal work.
Oh, cool.
Those types of uses.
For which user? Okay. Do you do some of his other locations too?
Yeah, we did some at the Rhino.
Okay. Yep, the Rhino one turned out really cool.
What are they? Theaters?
Yeah, Bijou is a curry like quick serve, and Atomic Cowboy's pizza and beer, and then biscuits in the morning. Very creative spin on biscuits. Yep. He's open like 7 till 2 in the morning.
They said pizza till 3.
They serve pizza till 3? Oh, there you go.
They serve slices at the one. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of his concept. He has some kind of, that you can walk up, grab a slice, and go late at night. I think that's his concept. Yep. He didn't want to deviate.
Is a brewery on here?
Oh, no, it's added.
It is on the
I think we do have a picture of it. And then after you guys are done, if you want to walk around and kind of look at some of the concepts we pulled up.
What about like food bars in the city?
I would say
Medium or are they small?
Oh, no.
March?
Tony's.
They're going in at Happy Canyon and Hamden.
Tony's. That's Tony's.
Oh, Tony's? Oh,
Yeah, Tony's would be great.
Tony's is awesome.
Yeah, medium is small.
in the old Safeway building there that sits
Like I
back
see that medium is like grounds down.
behind the Dunkin' Donuts.
Is that where Tony's is?
Where at?
The Canyon in Hamden?
Yeah, where the old Safeway building was, and they put in a Dunkin' Donuts and a fresh salad place or something.
I think that's primarily, sometimes they'll have like senior housing, 55 plus.
Tony's has great meat.
I've got a question. I've got Whole Foods right down the street.
Yep.
I would assume that would come into
Definitely like a curry on that.
consideration if you're going to be looking at putting in
Yeah, that user would have to make a decision if that made sense. So, I mean, I think that's where it kind of, what was your name?
Ryan.
Ryan. To Ryan's point, that's kind of where it all comes together. Is it actually feasible for a tenant to come to the location?
No, you don't know.
That's the thing, right?
Nobody has a crystal ball.
Yep.
It's kind of grim over there, sort of.
They do, I want to be their best friend.
More of a son and on Colorado.
Like activation, that would be like some smaller users, like I said.
Yeah, we have some of those images of the character, the next station down here, kind of those retail with community gathering areas or smaller retail, but it'd be great to record it on here as well.
My house on the north side of the street.
So I had a question.
This one are specific places or things that people mentioned in the previous community meetings. So this one is very specific. This one is South Gaylord Street, Old South Pearl, water feature like Union Station.
Gotta have that. Gotta have a splash mountain. Some kind
A
of water
splash
feature
mountain.
with a splash that people one or more, depending on how.
And then Stanley Marketplace, there have been a number of mentions of also just the aspect that it's smaller, some smaller uses with community seating areas, bike share and bike options.
Yeah, I think there's a bike parking facilities on this side.
And then a plaza and Punch Bowl Social was also mentioned a few times, that type of entertainment use.
Well, I was going to say, you probably, since you put these together, are much better knowing kind of where they are, but if you want to take a look at some of these and tell us what you see, like traffic flow, where would you go?
Don, do you want to introduce any of them?
Yeah, because some of the things we're talking about here have to do with the streetscape, and specifically how whatever gets developed on the site interacts with the adjacent streets as a transition to the existing neighborhood. So, of course, the zoning station that you guys listed in on, that has to do with the height, but then there are the other elements, and of course we're not to the point of designing those right now. We're very early on, but the other elements would be how the ground level looks, the sidewalk, the setback, the landscaping that's in that zone from the street to the buildings. So it's the streetscape. That's how we describe it. It's kind of the public realm of the street between whatever is developed on the site and the existing streets that surround it. So those are a lot of what we're trying to depict here. Is how that edge addition might look. How much landscaping should that have? How urban should that be, or how suburban?
You're never going to have enough landscaping.
Well, here,
Don't worry about that one.
let's talk about that, because a lot of people think, okay, let's put in a really big setback and put in a lot of landscaping. What it ends up looking like is suburbia. It looks too suburban.
We are in suburbia.
No, but I mean, but what I'm saying is, it looks very car-oriented. It starts to look very automobile-oriented,
like that.
and it's not so much pedestrian-oriented. So there's a balance. There's a, that's why we have a variety of things here. There's a balance of how pedestrian-oriented it should be versus auto-oriented. So when you start to put in those big setbacks, that's what we've learned planning over the years, is that it becomes less pedestrian and more auto. So
like when you think,
The auto depends on the parking.
well,
when
right.
you think of where
The more
frequent
parking you build, the more cars will come to park. Right. The less parking,
Yeah,
the more walking and
They
biking.
know. They're experts at keeping the parking way low.
Or when you think about maybe what places you frequent, maybe in places that work for you or don't work, and you avoid or you frequent because of how you approach it.
Right.
So like if you go, say, if you compare a place like Belmar versus a place in Aurora, right off the freeway.
Northfield? With the Target, the theaters.
No, it's right by the mall, right across the street from the mall, where you drive and you park right at the front, like all the. I know.
Aspen, have you been to Aspen Grove? Are you thinking Aspen Grove?
Are you in the ideal home?
That's one
Okay.
approach, but I'm just thinking that's a way to think about it, maybe.
Oh, you
How
mean
approach
all the way out at, off
off of the
E470?
470,
And it's E470, and there's a name for it. E470.
Is it the one down south?
Yes.
Where there's like an L&L barbecue.
South Park or
South
South Park?
So I just suggested maybe
South.
how you approach different shopping areas or retail or whatever. Like if you avoid places because it's hard to park or hard to approach, you know, what you need to do. Or if you purposely go to a place, like, you know, because the atmosphere
Right,
or something.
because whether it's designed as a destination,
Right.
or whether it's designed for convenience,
Right. Or you just purposely avoid because it's just a mess.
right, or it's poorly designed or not
Yeah.
designed at all. Yeah,
Well, you want this to be a destination, I'm getting that.
I like the green streetscape with benches because I like the mix of a garden with hardscapes.
Yeah, I do too. I like that.
And I like the fact that it brings your elevation down, which is a comforting feel to have a lower elevation. I like that.
Garden with what?
the green street with the benches there.
So you
benches,
have
is that what you said?
a garden with a hardscape.
Even if there was like a tall building adjacent to it, it feels like it's
Exactly.
more pedestrian oriented. Yeah, it still has that neighborhood feel.
My vision was along Arkansas because it's on the south part of the property where it's going to get the most sun and not be buried inside of tall buildings. Is some kind of a communal parkish type area. Maybe that's where at least one of the splash fountains goes. I was thinking of a rail or two for the skateboarders someplace, trees and benches, obviously, either like a circular or rectangular area gathering place outside, or a promenade feel. That's what I envision when I close my eyes.
Community garden.
If there's room, it's probably going to have to go on a rooftop.
Well, there you go. That's an idea. A rooftop
Well, you know,
garden.
Heather Gardens, how big is Heather Gardens in size? Does anybody know?
The acreage?
Yes,
That's way spread out.
because they have a lot of gardening in through there for people.
Yeah, I know, but their buildings are like way spread out. They got a golf course and
Well, no, I'm not talking about the golf course. I'm talking about the apartments that were put in, they were probably built in the
60s.
right?
Yeah, so they got
They have
plenty of space.
Right.
They took up plenty of space.
And across the road is
You know, I like Cherry Creek North. You know, I think they have a lot of nice pots with flowers in it. And it's just really nice to walk around in Cherry Creek North because of the beautiful flower pots.
So you'd say that's a
You mean like 2nd and 3rd Avenue? Where are you talking?
just in general.
Where they put all the new high stuff?
They have like on corners, they have really nice landscaping.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah.
And I just think it's interesting because it's native plants and it's just not your regular, you know, you pop in a geranium and you're good. It's just very interesting to kind of walk along.
good. So that'd be a good example of a streetscape.
Yeah, Cherry Creek North, but just the landscape.
Not the parking.
Yeah, not the parking.
You gotta have shade trees in the summer, so deciduous. And I don't know. I see all these tall buildings and you have trees in there. I don't believe they grow on streets like that. But, is that just for show, or do you really have?
Well, I mean,
you really have trees that'll grow practically in the shade year round.
Some of these are actually built projects, so, and they're in Colorado now, so we've got trees growing there. Some of these other images mainly are illustrations. So
Yeah, Photoshop.
Yeah, but most of these are photos. So
Are you familiar?
yeah.
Are you familiar with the multi-family project in Rotterdam, Netherlands? Famous, very famous. You all should be familiar with that.
With all the
Yes, you all should be
staircase.
familiar with that if you are deciding
Ay,
for. I'm dead serious.
The
Should be part of your education.
I don't get the
No, they're very
feeling
forward thinking.
residential.
Yes, very, very
From
forward.
1/3 to half.
Very
to probably
forward thinking. They've
2/3.
solved a lot of issues that people need in urban planning, living.
Do you have where?
Rotterdam.
Do you have to know the architect or?
No, you'll have, yeah, just Google
Rotterdam housing,
when we meet again, when you
urban
ask
housing or something, it'll come up.
That's actually one of the examples in my landscape
Craziest damn looking
Yeah.
place I've ever seen.
It's, I mean, even the way they've designed the interiors of the, you know, the apartments are for people to have an active lifestyle in the interior of their apartment. You have to reach to get a plug and pull it down so that you're constantly moving.
Sounds it.
It's
We'll
probably,
look into it.
it's world class. And they've solved the problem with traffic.
Do you remember the name of the actual? I'm looking up right now. And
But I can. So what exactly are you looking for in this?
Exactly what we're doing. Getting your input like this and really narrowing down, because we've got a broad spectrum of things here.
Different colors
Yeah.
sit next to each other, so that even if it's one continuous building, maybe it looks like 2 or 3.
Gotcha.
And articulation
Right.
on the outside
Sure,
of the
sure.
awnings and
Good.
whatever those things are in the center over there. Bakery,
Yeah, so articulation.
patio, thingies hanging off the front or something.
Because you're gonna have like in the, like the northeast corner, that's where you're gonna have like commercial.
You have.
I'll check it down.
Well, it's actually northwest, not
Northwest,
northeast.
where the dirt is.
Northwest corner. Now,
Right, by good.
we don't know if we're going to have 12 stories. That's just one concept. It's not a given.
But would that be where the commercial is gonna
What do
be?
you think I could like pay?
That because of its location closer to Colorado Boulevard.
Yeah.
That just from visibility to Colorado and things like that. It's
Inside?
like more so than residential.
Yeah, 12 stories doesn't work for retail. I mean, retail is really a street level. Okay, that's, so when you move to 12 stories, you're looking more at office.
You have the retail on the ground floor.
You could have some retail on the ground floor, depending on the look. But you can do 12 stories of retail.
Yeah, right. So that the 12 stories would be if there's a large office user, a hotel,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, and there's, I don't think it would, because we're looking at things in general, I mean, it could be a residential piece. I mean, there's larger buildings downtown that
Yeah, some of these are
residential.
taller, actually, like this building, but it's not 12 stories. We have an 8-story one on the other floor.
I'm on the task force and I'm talking with them, but my initial feeling was put a Darth Vader tower on that corner, 15, 20 stories, I don't care, but then give us more open space someplace else closer to the neighborhood, like Arkansas and Birch.
Okay.
And Hartford.
Right.
So you guys, are you absorbing the Good Times property, or is that still separate?
It's separate.
So far, no. So far, they haven't bought anything else. Probably be good.
It's
Probably be
in the deal,
good if they could buy it.
Well, yeah.
I don't know that it's up for sale.
What was the question?
Good Times.
No, it's not. So it's owned by a second party, and I think they, don't quote me, but I think they have like 7 to 10 years left on the lease. Good Times doesn't. It's somewhere in that range.
So you didn't find it? Seriously?
How about the residential area?
No, we're
that's gonna be over
still
by,
searching.
I think it's Berkshire and
This small little out parcel.
Yeah, that small parcel.
Maybe architectural awards.
We don't know.
Architectural awards. Rotterdam.
What would you like to see there? What is your?
I'll try that one.
Sure. I mean,
Preference.
I would say single family home would be fine. Yeah, probably be a big lot for a ornament, but because that's getting closer into the neighborhood.
Yes. Okay.
That's weird.
So we took notes on all your input, but before, I know there were a few people who wanted to
Award-winning
indicate
housing
they
in
especially
Rotterdam.
liked something.
It's just trying to wrap it
So
apart.
feel free to use one of these stickers to attach to that image. if you'd like to.
Looked at the city kind of night plan, and they identified Dahlia Street, on-street shared between bike paths and bike routes. So I identified that. We know that RTD serves the area. There's the 40 route in Colorado. There's also the 46 on Birch. So we kind of start putting that together, but we really haven't been able to do too much beyond that because, like as you mentioned, one of the next steps that we will do is calculating trip generation. So it's how much traffic the project's going to generate. And until they know what the project is, we can't do that step. And so that's why you were here tonight, providing the input because the team will go through and evaluate all those to determine what this project may include. And so then once we kind of have a feeling of that, then we can start looking at how much traffic it will generate. Here's some sample rates from different types of uses, just so that you kind of have a comparison point. Residential generates about 0.44 peak hour trips, so that's in the afternoon peak hour, trips per unit. Office generates 1.15 trips per 1,000 square feet. Retail a little bit more, 3.81 trips per 1,000 square feet. And then restaurant generates a significant amount at 9.77 to 14.13 per 1,000 square feet. But obviously restaurants are smaller, so when you compare that. That comes from actual traffic data collected across the country in thousands of studies. There's actually published rates. So it's the Institute of Transportation Engineers. They collect it. It's actually an international organization, and so these are just published rates based upon studies that they've collected.
Say no more. Okay.
Yep.
So I don't believe 0.44 at residential households.
In the peak hour. So that's the peak hour trip.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to envision. Less than half a car to each house.
Well, single family, if you're talking about like a single family house, then the peak hour rate is 1 trip per peak hour. So this is like multi-family residential.
Even though generally there's more than one car living there.
It'll generate 10 trips on average throughout the day. Single family house.
Well, that's because they stay off the roads during the peak hour.
Yes. So, there's school-based trips, there's work-based. So it's all done on counts. Almost all of the calculations for that is done, in the United States throughout the country. And so those are just standard rates that have been developed and used for 60 years. They constantly change them. The 10th edition just came out of the trip generation manual, and so they change it about every 6-7 years just based upon differences in traffic patterns that change over time. But we're up to the 10th edition now on that.
So I have a question. So what can you do? Let's say that, this commercial building's going in, or you've got a lot of housing going in. I mean, what actually can you do? Do you work with the city to say, hey, we think based on what's going in there, the density, it's going to pick up the traffic, therefore we propose, and you work with the city to make changes? Maybe, I don't know, add more stop signs or speed bumps, or, I mean, what one-way streets?
Yep, that's right. So any of those mitigations are available, and that is what we do. So once you collect all of the traffic, then you assign it to the street network and you evaluate it. And we do work with the city. We work with the city a lot on all of these projects, and then based upon that and our evaluations, it will determine what's needed, what changes are needed, based upon what will best serve this project, the traffic, or the surrounding area. And so it's a traffic study that's done for the neighborhood.
How far out does your study go? How much area are you covering?
I anticipate it to include like this area that we show, so from Louisiana, Arkansas, Florida, Colorado, Birch, and Dahlia. However, study areas are identified based upon a scoping meeting that we hold with the city and county of Denver, and we haven't done that yet because it's based upon how much traffic the project generates, and we don't know that yet until we get the uses.
it's going to generate a lot.
So the larger
thinking
the
big.
project, so the larger the project, and the bigger the study area. The smaller the project, it could just be like an intersection on the road. So it varies based on that.
What I would like to see is taking the study all the way to Holly, how the traffic from this site will impact, but also in conjunction with the other site, and how they're going to impact together. Because this hits Holly at Louisiana.
Right.
And that's the intersection for these two sites. And that's where my house is. So,
Well, that's a good point because the children in the neighborhood come to the school. The families congregate for traffic trips to the school.
Right.
so are you doing analysis on the Cook Park site as well?
No, it's not. The meeting's going to be at Cook Park.
Well, it is, but
yes.
if he's Kentro, he's still the guy, right?
Well, I'm Kinley Horn, but I am helping them with that traffic study.
So there's two separate guys doing traffic impacts, one for each site?
There could be, but they've asked me to help on that project also, so I will be helping them with that one too.
So you're in a very...
I'm with Kinley Horn.
That's what I thought. They are the traffic study people.
Sure, but he's in a unique position to be able to analyze both sites
so it works
in context with each other.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's great. That's a good point, good idea. Tom's taking notes, and so that's good. We haven't got to that point yet because we haven't had that discussion with the city. But, I was talking with Chris about the scoping meeting, which we will be having here pretty soon once they start getting uses together, and we're going to do the scoping meeting together as one project in terms of the traffic study, and so the scoping meeting will incorporate both of the redevelopments based on
I don't see how Florida does not become 4 lanes with the left turn lane. You still need that, the left turn pockets. So I don't know where you're going to put bikes.
on which street?
Florida.
On Florida?
Oh yeah, from Monaco to Colorado.
There talks of
None of this is going to work without that being 4 lanes, I'll tell you that.
is there talks of roundabouts at all?
That's definitely something that we evaluate to see if there's any control needed, that something like that. So yeah, that would.
Well, even going in on Louisiana or Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I think based on the character, that would be a fine application for the volumes. So yeah, I mean that would be something that would be considered for potential improvements.
So how about when you do these traffic studies, and then let's say everything opens up, do you guys come back after, I don't know, 6 months or so and say, okay, everything's going exactly how we thought it was, or maybe it's not and we need to change something? I mean, is that part of the traffic study?
It is not specific to this development, but that's my job. That's all I do for, I work for the city and county of Denver. We're one of the engineers that helps the city, and so working for the city, we do that all the time where we're looking at intersections, and so all of this area will be studied. It has been studied, and it will continue to be studied, and so we do evaluate things based on any of those changes or any differences that we see, related to something that comes up.
And on Mississippi, what I said about Florida, improvements to the east of
but not specific to this application.
Probably Cherry.
So
I just wonder,
east of Glendale.
something could come up after you guys have done your study. I just wonder what is our next recourse.
Right. So,
come back.
Yeah, it would be just communicating with the city staff. If something comes up after it opens, that does happen, and so then, the city needs to look at something, we need to look at something, we'll go out there and evaluate what changes may be needed.
I remember from our first meeting that there was an individual who asked that you also be on Colorado Boulevard West, and I made that statement, this is the school, but actually Corey Merrill is west of Colorado Boulevard, and a lot of families from this neighborhood go there as well.
Right.
I remember they asked that study be included in that.
Is that school? What street is that school? Okay.
Florida, west of Florida.
West of Florida to at least Mississippi. Bonnie Gray's north of Mississippi. So Corey Merrill's basically south of Mississippi on the west side.
St. Paul Street.
Well, that's good comments. Yeah, we haven't obviously developed that study area. We will with the city. But those are good comments. We appreciate it.
I'm thinking because we have so many young people moving into the neighborhood with young children. and
Talk louder. She can't hear you.
I'm thinking of all the families moving into the neighborhood with young people that are using the schools and the traffic and just, we're adding so many more
Because
people.
allegedly those schools on the west side are better than
Well, we're adding
east
so
side.
many, people, the density. The traffic, as you know, is the number one concern.
The traffic's really changed a lot over the last 5 years.
Well, frequently it doesn't move on Colorado Boulevard, and they can't improve it. So what, you got to put a double decker on it to improve Colorado Boulevard. I don't know how you improve Colorado Boulevard.
We have to start riding the bus, you and I, all of us, because I jump in my car. It's changing habits.
No, I ain't gonna be riding the bus. That's 20 years from now, and it gets better. I know these guys like to build as if it was happening now. It's not going to happen for 20 or 30 years. We're in suburbia. This is going to be the problem. It's going to be a huge clash, I think, because people move to suburban areas for a reason, and I know the city wants to Main Street this or downtown it or something like that, and it's not going to work with the adjacent neighborhoods, so I don't know.
So do you guys coordinate with RTD? I don't know. Because I see some...
Yep, there's a couple stops here. We know about the Birch 26. There was a comment previously about looking at that transit line along Birch and whether or not it could be incorporated within the project. That's something that we could consider and talk with RTD about. So we do that.
I think it's fine where it is. I just wondered if it was something you coordinated with here.
We do. That doesn't happen as often. Our direct work really is with the agencies, so the city. RTD is an aspect of it, just the same as bike lanes and any of those aspects. So it's a smaller subset rather than the study of the intersections and what's needed. Like the timing. We'll evaluate that too and see how we can improve the timing of these intersections. So there's a lot of that. We heard from the last meeting that there's left turn arrows needed. There's phases that aren't there, and so you have a difficult time turning left.
Yeah, I would say that they probably are going to have to put a left turn at Arkansas,
right,
in Colorado.
Oh, definitely, for sure.
Because I usually have to wait through the whole ride before I can turn. If you get somebody that does a U-turn,
right. So those are things that we look at too. So we look at everything, even that small of it, just looking at the timing of the signal and how can we improve operations of that signal for the traffic that's driving through. Yep.
Good luck in Colorado.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good to see you again.